Yesterday, the One Nation Senator Pauline Hanson and leader was joined by the former Prime Minister Tony Abbott to launch her new book, Pauline in Her Own Words. As you know, in August 2003, Senator Hanson and One Nation Party co-founder David Ettridge were sentenced to jail, allegedly on fraud charges. Pauline spent 11 weeks in jail before the decision was overturned, thankfully, on appeal. There was a suggestion Tony Abbott helped arrange funding and legal advice for chasing down Senator Hanson and David Ettridge. But that's in the past. That's 15 years ago. And Senator Hanson's on the line right now. Hello.
Hello, Ray. G'day. Good morning.
Oh, you know what? It's more about, life than politics, what I saw in the papers this morning and on TV last night and heard on the radio.
In what regard?
Well, I just think, first of all, I was happy that he accepted an invitation to launch a book. But I was even happier that you extended an invitation for him to launch a book. And I think, people are measured by their actions, not their words. And I think your actions in inviting him and his actions in accepting the invitation speak volumes for both of you. Both of you.
Thank you.
So I think congratulations are in order.
No, I appreciate that. Sometimes we've got to get over the past. You can't wallow in self-pity or hate, and especially that we're both members of Parliament here. And I feel so passionate about what I do and what I want to achieve. And the thing is that if Ray, I'll tell you, I'm like a bloody old elephant. I don't forget. but sometimes you have to move on in life. You can't just have this hatred. And you know what? In 2013, and after watching Gillard and Rudd run the country, I thought, they can't stay there. They're destroying this country. So anyway, when Tony Abbott was running 2013, I actually sent him an email and wished him all the best. He was, I think, gobsmacked over it came from me, but his reply was very nice. And then when I won my seat in 2016, he rang up and he spoke to me and he congratulated me.
Oh, that's good.
He's had a cup of coffee since. That's been recorded on Facebook. We've had a couple of meetings. Nothing social. No. It's all business. And I have respect for the man. He is the former Prime Minister. I think some of his policies and ideas, he stopped the boat. That's been my line right from the very beginning. And it was so funny. I thought about this. They said, who do you want to launch a book? And I thought about it and I thought, okay, I'll ask Tony Abbott. So I picked up the phone and I said, Tony, I'm going to ask you something cheeky. I said, will you actually launch my book? Well, he laughed. And I said, look, I'll send you a book, have a read of it, see what you think. And that was the end of last week, I think last Thursday. Sunday he rang up, confirmed he would launch it for me. And I said, have you read the book? And he said, no, I haven't. I said, Tony, there's nothing in it that's going to cause any problems. I said, but please read the book. And I said, if you do have concerns, I have no problems. You can pull out of it. And he didn't.
Well done.
So, yeah.
It's funny. I think about what he's been saying recently and shouted down. You talk there about stopping the boats, and he did that in concert with Scott Morrison, and now Peter Dutton continues to take up that good work. But the discussion now is about stopping the planes to a certain extent and immigration. And I heard a fascinating interview earlier this week with my colleague Michael McLaren about the impact on our economy and the impact on house prices. And that if we reduced it from, say, a tick over 200,000 and cut it back to closer to 100,000, the impact it would have on the country in terms of just not stopping it altogether, slowing it down until we can have a bit of a breather and see where we're heading in the next few years.
Ray, that's what I've been saying for years, and I've been trying to get this debate, the discussion going, which they don't talk about. Now they're starting to realise, and I see that Luke Foley is now calling for having an input, the states have an input into the immigration because they're having to pick up the pieces of the impact it's having on their states and their cities, which they should. The immigration numbers are around about 216,000 this year. We've got 18,750 refugees. We've got 90,000 457 visa holders, plus their families of another 70,000. Then we've got about 350,000 foreign students, plus the business migration. We can't cope. And that's what I'm saying about the housing and all these other issues. If we get the immigration right, we can get everything else to flow in line. And it's just getting them to debate about it. But big end of town, big business, like your Harvey Normans and different ones, they actually want it because they're selling more product, more white goods. but it's the impact it's having on the average Australian who are having to wait longer for hospital queues, for nursing homes, for the infrastructure, for the roads, schools, everything. That's where we're losing our standard of living and way of life.
So I'll be a bit selfish in relation to roads because I live in Sydney and I frequently go to the Gold Coast, and I'm seeing it more and more as I travel, say, from the Gold Coast to 4BC at Cannon Hill, or as I travel the streets of Sydney. If you don't live in Sydney, people won't believe the sort of drama you've got to put up with. And I'm lucky I come very early, so there's not much traffic when I get to work. And I go early, so there's not much traffic when I go home. But all the poor buggers trying to get from southwestern, western Sydney or northern Sydney to the CBD or even close to the city, if you leave at 7 o'clock, it's a 2-hour trip. I mean, it's, the morning peak now starts about 5:45 and finishes about 10:15. And
I'm in Brisbane, and I live an hour outside of Brisbane, and some mornings there, if it depends on what time, it can take me near 2 hours to get into the office. We can't cope with this, that's what I'm saying, and we haven't kept up with the infrastructure. A lot of cities around the world have got the fast trains and the proper infrastructure. We haven't got the money to actually do that, and that's a big problem about it. Because of the size of our country, people take their cars. Immigration is the basis of everything. They're saying that we need to bring in the migrants here that will work and pay the taxes to provide for those retirees now, or those people on pensions. But that's only going to happen further down the track. These ones bringing in now, they're going to retire one day. So are we going to bring in more migrants to provide for them? We can't keep going the way that we're going. And I'm going to keep pushing this until we get a reduction in our immigration numbers and the effect that's having on our housing. Like I said, everything, it does flow from that. But it's good to see that others are starting to talk about it now because they're starting to wake up, and it's up to the Australian people to drive it.
So you're in a very powerful position as one of the crossbenchers, and I noticed that the legislation that the government were trying to push through in relation to company tax didn't get through because a couple of other people weren't in agreement. But
couldn't get them on board.
No.
But anyway, negotiations are still going on.
Yeah, we'll get to that in May.
To have it, yes.
But I guess the point I'm making is that, because you are in a powerful position and other crossbenchers are in the same position, you can push these ideas about, and that, you'll be shouted down by your critics, as I will be. Oh, they want to stop immigration. No, we want to slow it. We want to just temper it for a short time to see what difference and what impact it makes. And you're in that position. Now, you mentioned the days of Rudd Gillard Rudd, and I sometimes toss and turn and have nightmares when I think about what happened to our country under their leadership, and I think about the waste of money on the BER, the pink bat scheme, and it goes on and on and on. In this forthcoming election, it would suggest heading into the 30th loss for the Prime Minister that he'll struggle to retain power, and it could be a Labor government. Now, you become a very important player because hopefully, even into that government, there'll be a House of Review that won't be as compliant as perhaps the Labor Party would like if they're in government.
Correct. Ray, I take this position. It's a huge responsibility. That's why I try to have my head around all the legislation and see what's coming so I can make the right decisions. Now, it's very important. So if the Labor Party do get government after the next election and we have a play in the Senate, and I don't believe they'll get the full control of the Senate, both houses, I don't think that will be the case. My position, again, will be looking at the legislation that's put up by the government at the time and, okay, let's say it is Labor. I will look at that legislation again, as I do now, and pass it based on its merits for the people and for the country. If it's not, I will tell them why, and I do exactly the same now. It's very, I want to have a well-managed position in this Parliament, and I can only gain the trust and confidence of the public if I do review legislation based on its merits. I cannot support one party or another. Even times we vote with the Greens based on their merits of what they're putting up. And I oppose legislation based on its merits and sometimes vote with the Labor Party. But They're lies that they're putting on the floor of Parliament, that I don't speak about apprenticeship schemes and stopping 457 visa holders. I was responsible for stopping 457s coming into the country because I spoke directly with Dutton's office and the Prime Minister's office, and that's why they reviewed it. It's not finished yet. There's still a lot of work to do with it. Pushing the apprenticeship schemes, it was under the Labor Party 2011, I cut the apprenticeship schemes and the TAFE colleges, the funding to it. They've done nothing. I've now got, under an agreement with the government, to bring in 1,000 apprenticeship places. That's only a pilot scheme. I want to keep these kids in rural and regional areas to get jobs instead of leaving their families and coming to the cities. There's so much more that I'm trying to achieve, and I have achieved so much. And I'm proud of, being able to do it for my colleagues, but in a balanced, measured way.
Do you know how young you and I were when we first started talking?
Yeah, we're the same age.
I know. We were much younger. We're getting smarter as we get older, Pauline.
Yeah, I know. It goes back, a long time ago, 22 years.
Yeah.
But it's been I'm so privileged to be here, and I know the responsibility that I have, and I've had my ups and downs over the years. And, the company tax cuts, I was opposed, and I do believe that we need to attack payroll tax in each state, and I still believe that, and I will continue until that is addressed. But with the company tax cuts, we're in looking at and what I've found out, the information, I've got businesses, especially in Queensland, who are just about to go under. I've got the rising electricity and power costs. One company in Queensland is going from $350,000 up to $553,000 by 2020. And they're putting $1.2 million for power panels in their own company to reduce their costs. Now, they're talking about, what are they going to do? Are they going to cope or go overseas? And that's only one company. Now, and I'm thinking, right, the company tax cuts are going to benefit the Australian companies here to give them relief. I know multinationals don't pay the taxes. I've been talking about for 22 years. Don't worry, they're on my radar, and I'm actually going after them to pay their taxes, and I'm putting so much pressure on the government to address that. Let's look after the Australian companies now, give them some relief with the company tax cut, deal with the other issues, because whether we bring it in or not, they will never change, the multinationals not paying their taxes unless we go after them. But that's a separate issue, and that's going to be my job.
All right. Well done. Always great to talk to you. Look after yourself. Happy Easter, and we'll talk soon. Thanks.
And I just want to wish everyone a very happy and safe Easter.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Senator. Pauline Hanson, leader of One Nation, talking to us, and she's a smart woman, not given the credit she deserves in relation to a whole range of matters.